Traveling through the world of wizards, Chen Mu thought he would spend his entire life just waiting to die, but to his surprise, he was bound to the wizard's life simulator. Do you want to start a life simulation? Simulation ends, please select your reward. Preserve Realm, or Preserve Technique, Wizard Simulator, teach you how to destroy the world from scratch. This is a story of a young boy starting from the secondary continent and pushing the wizarding world and the endless plane all the way. Wizardry Flow Simulator. Don't abuse the master, kill decisively. Keywords of the novel. Wizardry Road starting from the emulator without pop-ups. Wizardry Road starting from the emulator. Download the complete text of Wizardry Road starting from the emulator, and read the latest chapters of Wizardry Road starting from the emulator. Chapter 1. The Wizard's Life Simulator. Read more. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. The Wizard's Life Simulator. Follow up. Asphyxia, hypoxia. This is Chen Mu's most intuitive feeling now. He felt like he was shrouded in darkness and his mind was no longer clear. His heartbeat began to slow down and his blood pressure began to drop. He can feel the coldness of his limbs and feel the blood flowing from his mouth and nose. Are you going to die? All the memories of the past seemed blurry, and at this moment, he only had one thought in his heart and kept repeating it. But in the next moment, a light seemed to surge out of his mind, hot and bright like the sun. The darkness was dispelled, and Chen Mu's consciousness had never been as clear as it was now. It's like birds returning to the mountains and forests, and fish swimming freely in the sea. A memory that didn't belong to him suddenly appeared in his mind. The sense of conflict and discord that was not forcibly inserted into a memory made Chen Mu instantly understand everything. At this time, he was the second son of Arthur Weasley, the Earl of the Far East in the Kingdom of Winter. He was an ordinary person with no strength to bind his hands. Have I traveled? This is the first thought in Chen Mu's mind after waking up. His current state is not quite good. The blood gushing from his mouth and nose stuck to his luxurious clothes, his face pale and swollen, and his eyes slightly protruding. My heart was still slightly weak, and my whole body trembled slightly, as if a drowning person had just been rescued. Am I cursed by a wizard? This is the second thought in Chen Mu's mind after he regained consciousness. In his already integrated memory, his predecessor had offended a second-level wizard apprentice who passed by the Kingdom of Winter. The cause was just a small matter, and in my memory, my predecessor had already sincerely apologized, and his father Arthur Weasley had prepared a generous gift to come and apologize. If this matter had ended here, Chen Mugong would not have been in this state after crossing over. The wizard apprentice clearly did not let go of his predecessor, so when he left the kingdom, he cast a curse spell on his predecessor. When Chen Mu crossed over, his predecessor had already been cursed and drowned. And he, who took over Viri Weasley's body, still fell into a cursed state. Although she didn't know why the cursed state was cleared afterwards, Chen Mu felt that it should be related to his time travel. Chen Mu supported the round table and sat on the chair, taking a silk handkerchief from the side to wipe the blood from his mouth and nose. The blood no longer flowed, but sticking to her face still made Chen Mu feel uncomfortable. Chen Mu gently rubbed the center of her eyebrows with her hand, trying to ease the headache. Although the curse has been cleared, Chen Mu can still feel the feeling of drowning at this moment. The memory has been completely organized by him. He traveled to a kingdom similar to the medieval Europe of his past life. My father is the Earl of the Kingdom of Winter, and Chen Mu is the Earl's second son. This identity is already considered upper class in the Kingdom of Winter. The Earl's fiefdom is very large, and if compared to his previous life, Chen Mu's father's fiefdom is probably equivalent to a first-tier city in his previous life. It is precisely because of this identity that Chen Mu was able to understand the existence of wizards as soon as he traveled. That's right, unlike the medieval Europe of the past, this world has extraordinary power. Even without mentioning the wizard, in Chen Mu's memory, the knight who activated the Seed of Life is not an ordinary person. In Chen Mu's memory, when Veery was very young, his father Arthur Weasley took him to test his wizarding abilities. The result is not that there is no qualification at all, but it is not much better than this, and the detected qualification is 5th class. This kind of talent leads to a lifelong cultivation of the idea of the underworld, at most reaching the level of a 2nd class wizard apprentice. Seeing such a result, although Arthur Weasley was somewhat disappointed, he was just a little disappointed. He did not let Veery go out to sea to pursue the path of the wizard, which was so elusive that it reached the extreme. Instead, he brought his predecessor back to his territory. Being a wealthy child is not better than being an experimental subject in the wizarding continent. Although the father of the predecessor of the wizarding continent has not been there, he is also aware of it. The 5th class qualified wizard apprentice is the experimental object and they arrive there. Wizards in the wizarding continent don't care about your identity, even a prince is useless. Alas, it's impossible to explore the mysterious path of the wizard while traveling through a lifetime. This traveler is also too unsuccessful. Chen Mu let out a sigh in his heart, but he didn't have the negative emotion of despair, at most he was a bit disappointed. After all, his background is already better than countless people. The son of the count can be said to have been born in Rome. What else can he be dissatisfied with? It's the same if he can't be a wizard knight. After organizing his thoughts, Chen Mu stood up. After getting up, Chen Mu tried to move her body and found no discomfort. His current state is much better than when he first crossed over, at least the feeling of drowning is gone. Chen Mu walked towards the place where she washed up according to the memory in her mind. He plans to take a shower and change clothes to find his father. He has some things he needs to consult with his father in this lifetime. But after arriving at the place, Chen Mu found that he had an inexplicable aversion to water. I don't know if the curse of the previous wizard apprentice left a lasting effect on this body. Chen Mu had a feeling of wanting to escape at the sight of water. Chen Muqiang endured this discomfort, simply rinsed his body with water, and then changed into clean clothes. His complexion is very bad, it can be said to be very bad. But now he can't control so much anymore, he needs to meet his father as soon as possible. Because his predecessor didn't like the feeling of being taken care of, most of the time Chen Mu lived alone. Even the small estate where he lived did not have a single guard. For this, his predecessor's father advised him a lot, but he was rejected by his predecessor. If it weren't for Chen Mu crossing over this time, there is a high probability that his body will be discovered by the maid while cleaning the room 1 or 2 days later. Chen Mu lives very close to the place where his father, Count Arthur, lives. Although they separated a long time ago, they are still living in a large estate. As soon as he said goodbye, Chen Mu set off to the place where his lifelong father lived. He met the Earl of the Far East as he had hoped. As remembered, Count Arthur had blonde hair and a beard all over his face, appearing much more robust than Chen Mu, like an upright lion. "What's wrong? Your complexion is very bad." Arthur looked at Chen Mu and spoke with a mellow voice, with a hint of concern that was beyond words. Chen Mugang was about to answer, but he froze in place. Because a cold mechanical voice suddenly came out of his mind. All negative states have been cleared, the wizard's life simulator has been bound. Do you want to open the property panel? Chen Mu subconsciously nodded in her heart. The next moment, a blue transparent light curtain appeared in front of him. Name: Chen Mu, Spirit. 1.3, Constitution. 0.9, Realm. None, Witchcraft. None, Night Skill. None, Number of Simulations. 1, Note. Automatically converted to the host worldview understandable attribute panel. After the property panel appears, a note immediately follows. Do you want to start a life simulation? No. Chen Mu instinctively refused, and by now he had understood that his golden finger, commonly known as a cheat, was already in place. Victoria. Arthur's voice once again reached Chen Mu's ears, bringing Chen Mu back to his senses from being stunned. "Oh, I'm really sorry, Father." "Don't worry, Father. I just accidentally fell in the bathtub and got drowned." Chen Mu spoke with a perfectly awkward tone. Upon hearing this, Arthur cast a skeptical glance at Chen Mu, but didn't say much. At this moment, Chen Mu couldn't care about the night breathing technique anymore. He was eager to go back and study his suddenly emerging cheat first. So he sorted out his language and bid farewell to his father, Count Arthur. Although Arthur was a bit strange about his son's unusual behavior, he just shook his head and ignored it. Returning to his usual small estate, Chen Mu quickly reopened the panel and focused his attention on the simulation count column. The next moment, the same black note reappeared in front of him as before. "Do you want to start a life simulation?" "Yes." Chen Mu did not hesitate. "The internal investment has passed, so feel free to invest. Remember to bookmark and add to the bookshelf, hoping to follow up on new books. Thank you brothers and sisters for your support." End of this chapter. 2. Chapter 2. Quasi Knights, Pseudo, seeking further reading, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2, Quasi Knight, Pseudo, for follow.up reading, life simulation has been enabled, but due to the low version of the simulator, only text simulation is supported. The next moment, Chen Mu noticed that the light screen in front of her had changed, and black fonts began to appear one by one on the screen. 17 years old. You travel through time to become very Weasley, but almost get killed by cursed witchcraft. So you want to become stronger as soon as possible, and your gaze is on the path of knighthood. 18 years old. You told your father Arthur Weasley about your thoughts, but received news that your physical condition was too weak to learn breathing techniques, so you began to exercise your physical fitness. 20 years old. Exercise physical fitness and learn horseback riding and archery. 21 years old. Exercise physical fitness and learn swordsmanship. At the age of 25, your physical fitness and knightly skills meet the minimum standards for learning breathing techniques, and you begin to try practicing the Weasley family's Golden Lion breathing technique. 28 years old. You have been practicing breathing techniques for 2.5 years, but have been unable to activate the life seed for a long time. So, you want to swallow a secret medicine to forcefully activate the life seed. 29 years old. Everything is ready. Your father Arthur Weasley didn't want you to take the risk, but he still found the best secret medicine for you. Unfortunately, your activation failed. 32 years old. Lord's War broke out, you were beheaded with a sword, and you died. Simulation ends, please select your reward. Preserve realm, or preserve technique, is it over? Chen Mu was a bit surprised. Even if this was the end of the simulation. To be honest, he took the text that appeared before his eyes very seriously, almost reading it word by word. Is this my life in this lifetime? To live until the age of 30.2 and be beheaded by a sword lord. Seeing the black text gradually disappearing, leaving only a few words of preserve realm or preserve technique, Chen Mu unconsciously thought to himself. In the blink of an eye, Chen Mu's heart suddenly became firm. With an emulator, his future will not be like this, and he will even embark on the mysterious path of a wizard. Preserve the realm. As soon as his thoughts arose, Chen Mu's body underwent a huge change in the next moment. The muscles bulge almost instantaneously at a visible speed to the naked eye, and even the height is elevated by 2 to 3 centimeters at this moment. Click and wipe. This is the sound of wooden flooring being stepped on and broken. The sudden surge of force made Chen Mu easily break the wooden floor. There is an unsightly hole on the luxurious wooden textured floor. Chen Mu clenched his fist and could feel his surging power. He feels like he can even punch a cow to death now. This is not inflation, but an illusion caused by a sudden surge in power. The next moment, Chen Mu summoned the attribute panel, and a transparent light curtain instantly appeared before his eyes. Name: Chen Mu, Spirit. 1.3, Constitution. 2.1, Realm. Quasi Knight, Pseudo, Witchcraft. None, Knight Skill. None, Simulation Count. 0, his physical fitness has skyrocketed by 1.2. He remembers clearly that the previous value in his physical fitness column was 0.9, but now he has a full 2.1. Just one simulation has more than doubled the physical fitness. If those who have been polishing their bodies for decades know, they will probably be envious and jealous to the point of going crazy. Is this a cheat? Chen Mu murmured to himself in his heart. The genuine sense of physical strength brought him tremendous shock. There is nothing more authentic than feeling this feeling firsthand. It takes at least a few years for an ordinary person to become a quasi-knight from scratch, and without money, one cannot become a knight. But the realm that countless people spent countless money and time to reach was achieved by Chen Mu in just a few seconds. Chen Mu had a feeling that even those who had polished their bodies for decades without activating the seed of life would not have a higher body mass than him. After all, in the simulation, although he failed to break through the night by taking the secret medicine, he still improved his physical fitness by a large margin. Although no one compared him, Chen Mu believes that his physique should be among the top among countless quasi-knights. Now Chen Mu can no longer see the feeling of being pale and dying when he first started his journey. Now he has a rosy complexion, with sharp and angular muscles all over his body, and a head of not short golden hair. He has handsome eyebrows and sword eyes. But he still cannot compare with other quasi-knights. At most he is an ordinary person with quasi-knightly physical fitness, because he has not mastered any knightly skills. He has no knowledge of equestrian archery and swordsmanship that even ordinary knightly apprentices master. If seen by those great knights, they would only think that Chen Mu was born with divine power and was a knight with extremely outstanding talent, rather than a quasi-knight. Because quasi-knights require not only physical fitness, but also exquisite horsemanship and swordsmanship, as well as proficiency in several knightly skills. But Chen Mu is already very satisfied. After all, this is only the first simulation, so there is nothing unsatisfactory about such a significant improvement. Chen Mu urgently asked in his heart how to obtain the number of simulations, but did not receive any response. In the following days, Chen Mu gradually integrated into the identity of Veery Weasley. During this period, he also had meals with his father several times. Although Arthur was somewhat surprised by Chen Mu's physical changes, he did not inquire too much. In his eyes, Chen Mu had just grown a little taller, and he couldn't tell her specific physical fitness. Chen Mu is at the age of 17, and it is normal for him to grow taller. After all, this is not a cultivation novel. You can tell your realm at a glance. Chen Mu's father, Count Arthur, was also a knight and was known as the Golden Lion Knight by the nobles of the kingdom in his early years. But after inheriting the title of Count, the term Golden Lion Knight rarely appeared. After all, this title is far less intimidating than the Earl of the Far East. A few more days later, when Chen Mu felt the time was ripe, he approached his father, Count Arthur, and informed him of his thoughts. "Father, I want to practice night breathing and become a glorious guardian knight." In front of Arthur, Chen Mu said solemnly, with no hint of joking in his tone, only seriousness and solemnity. In the Kingdom of Winter, family knights, also known as guardian knights, are passed down from generation to generation. Basically, the son of every Grand Duke or the son of a Marquis will prioritize becoming a guardian knight. Because the top priority for inheriting the position of Lord is to choose from the family's guardian knights. If no one in this generation becomes a guardian knight, then they will settle for second place. The Weasley family is known as the Golden Lion family, and naturally has a tradition of breathing techniques, which is exactly the Golden Lion breathing technique that appeared in Chen Mu's simulation. Looking at his son, Veery Weasley, his eyes didn't seem to be fake, and Arthur's gaze added a hint of satisfaction and softness. He gently reached out to help Chen Mu in front of him, and then spoke up. "I am glad that you have this idea, but night breathing requires physical fitness and night skills. You can go find guard William and ask him to teach you equestrian archery and swordsmanship. After your physical fitness and knightly skills meet the requirements, I will pass on your breathing technique. There was a hint of relief in Count Arthur's tone, as if he had seen himself years ago in Chen Mu's body. It is also so steadfast and full of confidence. After hearing his father Arthur's words, Chen Mu bowed and withdrew, and that was the answer he wanted. His physical fitness is now at the pinnacle of being a quasi-knight, and what he lacks now is knightly skills. I don't know when the number of simulations will be available again, but what Chen Mu needs to do now is to quickly master the knight skills and practice breathing techniques. The ultimate goal is definitely to activate the seed of life and become a true knight. P.S. I will write a few hundred more words for chapters with text simulation, so don't worry about the author's word count. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. New Simulation Times, Seeking Follow-Up Reading. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3, New Simulation Times, Seeking Follow-Up Reading. 3 great suns hang in the sky, and the radiance emitted by the sun turns the entire sky red. In the year 492 of the winter calendar, July is also known as the scorching month, symbolizing the hottest month of the year. There was no wind at all, and the thick air seemed to be frozen. And under the scorching sun, within the villa, a young and handsome man was naked on his upper body, holding a silver-white long sword in his hand and waving it somewhat awkwardly. Sweat slid down Chen Mu's angular muscles, and Chen Mu gasped for breath. Practicing swordsmanship in such weather, even Chen Mu's physique is a bit unbearable because it is too hot. It's hard to imagine how those people wearing heavy armor would carry the Lord's War if it were launched this month. He didn't forget that the cause of his death in the last simulation was Lord War. In the past few days, he has also investigated which territory has a significant conflict with the Far East, but he has gained very little. Chen Mu stopped waving his long sword, returned the silver-white sword to its sheath, and placed it back on the sword stand in the courtyard. It's already very good, Viri. You can barely practice simple swordsmanship routines in over half a month. You have tremendous talent on the path of knights. Seeing Chen Mu stop practicing, William calmly said with a faint smile on his face, with a hint of relief in his tone. William is the captain of the guard regiment of Count Arthur, the father of Chen Mu. He is a great knight who has activated the seed of life and walked a long way on this path. Some people who were at odds with the Far Eastern leaders referred to this right-hand man who had served as a guard for Count Arthur for 30 years as the greedy wolf knight. It's not an exaggeration to say that William watched as Willie Weasley grew up. It's no wonder he felt relieved to see this young master embark on the same path as his former master. Your Excellency William, your generous teaching during this period is greatly appreciated by Viri. I will not disappoint your and my father's expectations, and I will do my best to become a glorious guardian knight. Chen Mu clenched his right fist on his left chest and said solemnly. Integrating all the memories of his predecessor, Chen Mu understood that the people here seemed to place great importance on these superficial skills. Sure enough, upon hearing Chen Mu's words, William's smile intensified and he happily patted Chen Mu's shoulder. William bid farewell to Chen Mu, as he had other things to deal with besides teaching him every day. A great knight is an extremely esteemed existence no matter where he is. Seeing William leave, Chen Mu took a bath in the small bathtub in the estate and changed into clean clothes. More than half a month has passed, and his sense of rejection towards water has become negligible. After taking a bath, Chen Mu gently wiped the water stains on her blonde hair with a handkerchief. The next moment, a transparent light curtain appeared before his eyes. Name: Chen Mu, Spirit. 1.3, Constitution. 2.1, Realm. Quasi Knight, Pseudo, Witchcraft. None, Knight Skill. Basic Swordsmanship, Beginner 12 out of 100, Number of Simulations. 1. There are new simulation times. At the moment of seeing the transparent light curtain, Chen Mu's heart was filled with joy. He opens the panel every day to take a look, just to see if there will be new simulation times appearing. I didn't expect it to actually appear today. Calm down, Chen Mu didn't rush to start the next simulation. But rather pondering in my heart, pondering why there was suddenly an additional simulation opportunity. Chen Mu racked his brains, but couldn't think of anything special today. After all, today's activity trajectory is the same as the first half of the month. If there's anything special, could it be eating an extra apple pie and drinking an extra glass of milk in the morning compared to usual? Chen Mu shook his head and removed the idea, which was too unreliable. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration flashed through Chen Mu's mind, allowing him to instantly grasp the key to the problem. A month. Today is just the first month to activate the emulator. Is this simulation frequency once a month? It seems like we'll have to wait until this time next month. Chen Mu believes that it is highly likely to be so. If there is any difference between today and the past, the only possibility is that today is the 30th day he binds the emulator, commonly known as a month. He doesn't know if the number of simulations in the simulator can be stacked, but he still plans to use this simulation first. After all, it is necessary to improve our strength earlier. The next moment, a string of black text appeared in front of him. Do you want to start a life simulation? Yes. Chen Mu didn't hesitate and answered yes in her heart. The blue light curtain disappeared, and strings of black text began to appear in front of Chen Mu. Chen Mu takes it very seriously and ensures that she doesn't leave any content behind. Life simulation has been enabled, but due to the low version of the simulator, only text simulation is supported. At the age of 17, you have adapted to a new environment and developed a quasi-knight-like physique. You begin practicing equestrian archery and swordsmanship at the age of 18. Due to your extremely high physical fitness, your equestrian and swordsmanship skills have made rapid progress, reaching the level of a knight apprentice in just 1 year, 19 years old. In just 2 years, you have reached the standard of practicing breathing techniques. Your father Arthur Weasley called you the most chivalrous person in the Weasley family in nearly 300 years. 21 years old. After practicing breathing for 2 years, you still cannot activate the life seed. You want to take a secret medicine to forcibly activate the life seed. 22 years old. Your father Arthur Weasley refused your request, but to prevent disappointment, he taught you the Weasley family's ancestral knightly skill. Lionheart / 23 years old. Lionheart / is the only knight skill in the Weasley family that can be used without requiring breath. You have been practicing Lionheart / throughout the year. 25 years old. You practice Lionheart / hard and persist in polishing your physique, but after 3 years, you still cannot activate the seed of life. Your father is stubborn, but you can only agree to let you take the secret medicine. 26 years old. Taking secret medicine, activation failed. Although your father was disappointed, he still comforted you not to lose heart. 29 years old. Taking the secret medicine again to activate the life seed still fails, and you have no choice but to focus on polishing your knight skills. 32 years old. Lord War breaks out, and you do your best to kill 2 formal knights of the Garden Lord, but you are also cut open by the sword of Grand Knight Liam Shives, and you die. Simulation ends. Please select your reward. Preserve Realm, or Preserve Technique. Chen Mu exhaled a mouthful of turbid air, and the black text began to disappear one by one, leaving only the last paragraph. I still couldn't activate the life seed to become a knight and died in the Lord's War at the age of 32. Chen Mu murmured to himself in his heart. His memory had the name Liam Sherway. Liam Sherway was a person under the command of Count Milan, who was located adjacent to the Far East and was known as the Rock Knight. Count Milan is also known as the Earl of the Garden. In Chen Mu's memory, this person had a good relationship with his father, Count Arthur. Since you haven't activated the life seed to become a knight, then keep the spell. Coincidentally, Chen Mu was also curious whether knightly skills belonged to the category of spells. The simulator did not disappoint him. As soon as his thoughts arose, countless memories flowed into Chen Mu's ocean of memories like water. Memories of equestrian, archery, and swordsmanship, including knightly skills such as lion heart slash, instantly appeared in Chen Mu's mind. These memories are like Chen Mu personally experiencing and practicing for countless years. Chen Mu could feel some changes in his body as well. At this moment, his back was forcefully straightened and became unusually straight. He could feel that although his strength had not increased, it could be better utilized. How to put it, if he only possessed power before, then now he is in control of power. The reason for such a big change to him is only 2 simulations. After 2 simulations, Chen Mu jumped from an ordinary person to a peak quasi knight that could even be compared to a formal knight. If there is a simulation plot, I will write an extra 400.500 words, so don't doubt that I will add water caret. It is extremely important to continue reading during the new book period. Everyone should follow up and flip to the last page before flipping back 1 page. Thank you. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Golden Lion Breathing Technique and Peak Quasi Knight, seeking follow-up. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Golden Lion Breathing Technique and Peak Rider. For further reading, the Far Eastern Territory has an extremely vast land area. The entire territory looks like a soaring eagle when viewed from top to bottom, so it is also called Eagle Ridge. The Golden Lion Manor, where Chen Mu and Count Arthur reside, is located in the heart of this eagle. The scorching sun burned, and there was no cloud or wind in the crimson sky. In the small training ground inside the estate, Chen Mu held a heavy sword and practiced the skills brought to him by the second simulation alone. The second simulation undoubtedly brought a huge improvement to Chen Mu. Chen Mu used one move at a time to knock out a sonic boom from the surrounding condensed air. Chen Mu instinctively operated the Golden Lion breathing technique with every breath. He could vaguely see a stream of air being sucked in by his nose and then exhaled. If Chen Mu were dressed in heavy armor and given a warhorse, he could even be on par with a formal knight. What is the concept of a formal knight? Even without armor, a formal knight can defeat hundreds of ordinary people with bare hands. If there is a handy long sword, even hundreds of people cannot get close, and this is the knight of this world. In the simulation, Chen Mu killed 2 formal knights on the front battlefield. Although he ultimately died in the hands of the Grand Knight, it is enough to demonstrate his formidable strength. During this period, because the trivial matters of the territory were handled by Count Arthur, Chen Mu's father, Chen Mu was able to practice his skills with peace of mind every day. However, he also did not reveal his peak quasi-knight strength, because that was too shocking. If his father Arthur found out, his first thought would definitely not be that he was an ancient genius, but whether his son Viri would become an experimental subject for wizards. After all, except for wizards who can transform an ordinary person into a peak quasi-knight within a month, no one else can do it. After completing his daily cultivation, Chen Mu instinctively summoned the panel, which turned into a blue light curtain and appeared in front of him. Name: Chen Mu, Spirit. 1.3, Constitution. 2.2, Realm. Peak Quasi-Knight, Witchcraft. None, Breathing Method. Golden Lion Breathing Method, proficient in 23/800, Knight Skills. Lionheart slash, proficient 42/800, Basic Riding, proficient 123/800, Basic Shooting, proficient 410/800, Basic Swordsmanship, proficient 522/1600, Basic Fighting, proficient 113/1600. Simulation count 0. The panel is included with the simulator and will be adjusted according to his understanding. So after Chen Mu obtained the night breathing technique in the simulation, the panel also added a breathing technique column. As for proficiency, the same applies. In Chen Mu's memory, based on the level of mastery of a skill, it is divided into 4 levels from bottom to top. Beginner, Proficient, Proficient, and Perfect. I took a look at the panel and found that there was not much change. Chen Mu's mind twitched as the light curtain disappeared before his eyes. Approaching noon, this is Chen Mu's dining time. Return to your own small estate restaurant. Chen Mu was the only one sitting in front of the dining table. In front of him were silver plates with roasted deer meat and white bread, some fruits, and even a small bottle of fruit wine on the side. Since becoming a Quasi knight, Chen Mu's appetite has doubled compared to before. So he hasn't had dinner with his father for a while now. Most of the meals are served by him alone, and the chefs in the estate will prepare the meals in advance and deliver them over. Chen Mu cut a piece of deer meat with a knife and fork, put white bread in his mouth, chewed it a few times, and then swallowed it directly. He is not so particular about eating, to be honest, he is still more accustomed to using chopsticks than knives and forks. It's too luxurious. Chen Mu sighed in his heart that the food he eats every day is a valuable gold coin, but his father, Count Arthur, never asks about these things. In the heart of his father, Count Arthur, even Chen Mu could eat and spit. This is the benefit of crossing over to become a noble in the kingdom. In the hearts of the lower class in the kingdom, Chen Mu's life was something they could never dream of. In the memories of their predecessors, the lower class of the kingdom would worry about every meal, and their daily food was dry and hard black bread. After finishing lunch, William Conley found Chen Mu with a smile on his face. However, today he is not here to teach Chen Mu the skills of knights, but to bring news to Chen Mu. Viri, 2 days from now is the hunting day in Dongha province. Many aristocratic children will participate in this hunting. Would you like to go with them to gain a deeper understanding? Hunting day. Chen Mu was taken aback for a moment, and the next moment memories of hunting day surfaced, with a sudden expression in his eyes. Dongha province is considered an extremely resource-rich province in the Kingdom of Winter. And the territory of Count Arthur, the father of Chen Mu, is within the East River province. This wealthy land will not be solely controlled by Chen Mu's father. In Chen Mu's memory, there was a marquis, 4 counts, and some viscounts in Dongha province. As for barons, there is no one in the East River province. Because most of the barons' fiefdoms were in mountainous and barren areas, the nobility also had a class within the royal kingdom. Sealed lands with warm rainfall and fertile farmland will naturally be controlled by nobles with higher power, as these areas will bring abundant food. And those mountainous and barren areas, due to food scarcity, are mostly fiefdoms of the nobility. Hunting day is an activity that the aristocratic children in Dongha province flock to every year. Hunting is naturally true hunting, but most of the aristocratic children participating in this activity are for social purposes, that is, to make connections and pave the way for their future. After all, decades later, it is likely that the aristocratic children who controlled the various territories in Dongha province were the ones who hunted together. In Chen Mu's memory, his older brother participated in the early hunting days. In recent years, after his elder brother visited the kingdom, the Golden Lion family has been absent several hunting days, and the original owner has not participated in this so-called hunting day. Chen Mu is not foolish either. This time William came to find him and said such a sentence, which must be the intention of his father, Count Arthur. Seeing Chen Mu not speaking, William still spoke with a smile on his face. Viri, the meaning of this hunting day is that you can go and see it. The Marquis of Dawn and the descendants of many counts will participate in this hunt, which will be a good experience for you. Upon hearing this, Chen Mu couldn't help but understand what it meant. Although he didn't care much about this hunting day in his heart, he still solemnly said, "I won't let my father down." As he spoke, his right fist clenched tightly on his left chest, and his gaze perfectly displayed a hint of youthful determination and confidence. Chen Mu understood that his father, Count Arthur, wanted him to meet some other noble children on this hunting day, which could be said to be paving the way for his future. He naturally cannot refuse this. If he refuses, although it won't have a significant impact, it will inevitably make his father, Count Arthur, feel a little disappointed in him. So Chen Mu agreed without too much hesitation. After all, this so-called hunting day was just a passing day for him. His future will definitely not be confined to being an earl. To borrow a phrase from his past life, his future is the vast sea of stars. William is very satisfied with Chen Mu's performance. In the past, Chen Mu has always been a child in his eyes. But this month's interaction made William understand that his young master was not an ordinary person either. At least some of the traits in Chen Mu's body are not even present in Count Arthur's body. So he said with a relieved expression, "Tomorrow I will come to pick you up. This time, I will accompany you and serve as a guard." Chen Mu nodded to show understanding after listening. Hunting day naturally won't be Chen Mu going alone. Even if Chen Mu wants to go alone, Count Arthur won't agree. After all, in Count Arthur's heart, gaining knowledge and networking are secondary, and Chen Mu's safety is the top priority. Even the descendants of the Count have very few individuals who can be personally guarded by the Grand Knight. It is evident from Count Arthur's appointment of William as a bodyguard to personally escort Chen Mu that he cares for her. Seeing William leave, Chen Mu returned to the training ground and picked up his heavy sword to put on a new posture. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. The Golden Lion Garden and Yaori Mountain, seeking follow-up reading, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Golden Lion Garden and Yaori Mountain, seeking follow-up reading, in August of the 492 year of the Lingdong calendar, in the Lingdong Kingdom, August is also known as the harvest month, symbolizing the season of harvest. By this month, the scorching climate will gradually disappear. The crimson sky turns pale red, with occasional gentle winds blowing by. At this moment, Chen Mu was changing into formal attire under the service of a maid. Inside are long sleeves wrapped around two arms and a luxurious ankle-length smock, which is the standard attire of the nobles of the Winter Kingdom. Outside, he was wearing a long men's coat. The long coat, also known as the Roman shirt, is made of extremely precious silk. A long coat not only prevents sunlight reflection, but also has the effect of preventing the temperature of the armor from rising due to direct sunlight. So during wartime, a long coat will be worn over the armor. On the surface of the long coat, embroidered with the golden lion emblem representing the Weasley family, the emblem is complex and gorgeous, adding a touch of unique temperament to Chen Mu. The waist of the long coat is equipped with a sword strap, which is used to hang the long sword and is integrated with the coat. And Chen Mu naturally had a silver-white knight sword hanging around his waist. The knight sword has no scabbard and is a standard double-edged sword with a total length of about 90 centimeters. There's nothing special about the shoes. Chen Mu is wearing a pair of pointed shoes as usual. Pointed shoes are shoes with a pointed front end. Under the service of the maid, Chen Mu dressed in formal attire. On this hunting day, he represents the face of the Weasley family and naturally cannot dress casually as usual. Chen Mu, dressed in formal attire, is a bit less easygoing than usual and a bit more dignified. Seeing the maid's blushing face as she left, Chen Mu also got up and walked out. William has been waiting for Chen Mu outside the estate. Unlike Chen Mu, who was dressed in luxurious attire, William wore light armor and a heavy sword hung from his waist. Seeing Chen Mu come out, William shifted his gaze to him, with a hint of surprise and confusion in his eyes. It's very similar, just like the original master. William's daze only recovered in an instant. In just a moment, he seemed to see Count Arthur from 30 years ago on Chen Mu. It was the same attire, but at that time he was just a small guard behind Count Arthur. Please follow me, young Master Viri. William unconsciously changed his address and then turned around to walk in front of Chen Mu. The aristocratic carriage is located outside the large estate, and there is still a distance from the small estate where Chen Mu lives. And the destination of Yaori Mountain this time is not too far from here, and it can be reached by taking a carriage and walking the main road in less than a day. Chen Mu followed William with a relaxed expression. Outside the estate is the Weasley family's Golden Lion Garden, and passing through the Golden Lion Garden is where carriages are parked. Passing by the Golden Lion Garden, Chen Mu looked around. In Chen Mu's memory, this place was once not a garden. This garden was specially built by his father, Count Arthur, for Chen Mu's mother, Lando Fia. But since the death of Chen Mu's mother, Lan Duo, there have been very few people here except for the gardener and maid. The Golden Lion Garden can definitely be considered a grand garden, surrounded by hundreds of marble columns and a composite corridor. The east and west ends protrude into two square pavilions, which are extremely luxurious and exquisite. Each marble cylinder is exquisitely carved. Upon careful observation, it can even be observed that each translucent carving is different. The cross-shaped canal divides the garden into 4 equal parts, with a lion fountain in the center and 12 marble lions carved around a circular marble water tray. The stone lion has a powerful and imposing appearance. These stone lions were all carved by a great knight himself with a sword. The garden has a herbaceous garden and a vegetable garden. Some ornamental plants are trimmed by gardeners into symbols of the Golden Lion emblem, and a large number of flowers and tree species are also cultivated in the garden, forming a vivid color effect. Although he has many memories about this garden, seeing it with his own eyes still brought a considerable shock to Chen Mu. William saw Chen Mu's footsteps slow down, so he turned his head to look at him. After seeing Chen Mu's gaze, William thought that Chen Mu was feeling nostalgic and remembered his deceased mother, so he could only sigh in his heart. In William's memory, Victoria's mother Randall was extremely fond of young Master Victoria during her lifetime. Almost everything is done by oneself, and a large part of the reason why young Master Viri is not accustomed to being taken care of by maids is because of his deceased mother. So he instinctively slowed down his pace and didn't make a sound to break Chen Mu's thoughts. As time passed, although William intended to slow down his pace, the two of them were still not slow and soon arrived at the spot where the carriage was parked. Chen Mu sat in the carriage carved with the Golden Lion emblem, and William also flipped over and got on his horse. Most of the horses in the Weasley family's horse-drawn carts are winter warhorses. This type of horse has extremely fast speed and strong endurance, and traveling thousands of miles a day is not a problem. Pop! William whipped his whip and the carriage began to move. The aristocratic carriages were extremely smooth, let alone walking on the main road. Chen Mu, who was sitting in the carriage, couldn't even feel the feeling of turbulence. The carriage is not slow, and Chen Mu and William will probably arrive within the range of Yaori Mountain the next morning. Hunting day is actually the start time of this activity, even if it's a few days late. Before the hunting begins, there will be a banquet tomorrow noon, and the dance party will be in the evening, which is more than enough time. As for the official hunting in the mountains, it is within 15 days after the start of the hunting day. So Chen Mu needs to leave the Far East for at least 15 days this time. But with William's guard, his safety can be assured. After all, in the kingdom, the Grand Knights are already the strongest group of people on the surface. Except for the legendary epic knights and wizards, no one can harm Chen Mu under William's protection. As for epic knights and wizards, the likelihood of their appearance is very low. There are not many epic knights in the entire kingdom, and there is not a single one in the wizarding kingdom. Few wizards will leave the wizarding continent and come to the barren subcontinent. Even if it does exist, it rarely appears in the kingdom of Lingdong. After all, the kingdom of Lingdong is not considered a major power on the secondary continent. As for the wizard apprentice who cursed the original master before, it was actually considered unlucky for the original master Viri. Perhaps the wizard apprentice just happened to pass by here and had a bad temper. There are prepared white bread and butter cheese in the carriage, and Chen Mu will eat some when he is hungry. If the life seed could be activated to become a formal knight, then there would be less demand for high-calorie food. At least Chen Mu did not see how William ate along the way. The sun sets, and the carriage still doesn't stop at night. The night vision ability of the Grand Knight is extremely strong, and it can even be said that it is not an exaggeration to see the night as bright as the day. The next day, 3 major suns rose one after another, and the dazzling sun shone down on the earth. Chen Mu and William also reached the range of Mount Yao. Yaori Mountain belongs to the Chensi territory and is the territory of Marquis Chensi. However, this only occupies a small part of the Marquis of Dawn's territory. The ultimate destination of Chen Mu's trip is the castle of Marquis Chensi on Yaori Mountain, where the banquet and ball will also be held. When he arrived, William parked the carriage at a dedicated horse farm, where many other families' carriages had already been parked. Chen Mu looked around and saw that some of the ethnic emblems on the carriage were unfamiliar to him even in his memory. The only thing he could recognize was the emblem of the Carlos family. The Carlos family is the family of the Garden Earl Melon Carlos, and the coat of arms is a wreath of lavender. Chen Mu did not forget that it was the subordinate of the Garden Count who killed him in the simulation. Upon seeing Chen Mu come down, the maid in a long dress immediately welcomed him. There are many maids in the stable, who were sent by Marquis Chensi to guide the children of the nobles. So Chen Mu followed the maid, while William fell half a step behind Chen Mu and walked towards the direction of the Marquis's castle. Seeking follow-up reading, end of this chapter. Chapter 6. Meri Carlos and Banquets, for follow-up reading, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6, Meri Carlos and Banquet, for follow-up reading, the Marquis of Dawn's Moor Castle is located on the summit of the Sun Mountain. The Moor Castle is built on the mountain and seamlessly blends with the surrounding forests, creating an extremely magnificent and spectacular sight. Chen Mu followed the maid up the steep mountain road. Climbed to the mountaintop, crossed the wooden bridge of the mountain stream, passed through the arched city gate, and enter the front yard of the castle with a unique cave. There is no longer the towering view of the ancient castle here, it feels more like stepping into an ancient estate. High towers, city walls, water pools, and long corridors. The wooden structure of the house makes the castle look even more antique. There are exquisite reliefs on the walls of the castle, and fully armed armored guards stand on both sides of the castle. Chen Mu followed the maid through the middle gate and entered the backyard of the castle. Here you can see the main building of the castle and 2 magnificent towers. This is the castle where the banquet is held. Before Chen Mu arrived here, there were already many young people dressed in noble attire whispering. If you can climb the tops of 2 tall towers, you can even have a panoramic view of the entire Yaori mountain forest. Within the main building of the castle, there are arched rooms, small churches, and a hall for reciting poetry and singing in the style of the Winter Kingdom architecture. Accompanied by exquisitely carved stone pillars and corridors, Chen Mu was somewhat impressed by this amazing architectural technique. Seeing Chen Mu and William introduced by the maid, some noble disciples turned their gaze to Chen Mu. There is surprise, awe, and envy in these gazes. Because Chen Mu is too dazzling at this moment. Golden hair and blue eyes, standing tall and upright, dressed in luxurious clothes. Compared to Chen Mu, it seems that they are not so aristocratic. Their eyes only paused for a moment before moving away. After all, staring at someone all the time is extremely impolite. Those present were all the leaders of various noble families, so naturally there would not be such impolite behavior. Chen Mu was not in a hurry to integrate into the circles of these nobles. Some things are urgent, let alone his original intention of going through the motions. Seeing Chen Mu motionless, William thought it was because Chen Mu was not familiar with the people here, so he whispered in Chen Mu's ear. Young Master Viri, the one with black hair and blue eyes is the son of the Black Snake Count. The one with brownish-red hair is the son of the Earl of the Garden. The clothes embroidered with 2 crossed swords are aristocratic children of the Rose family. The emblem resembling an eagle is the emblem of the Blue Eagle family. As a close guard who had been with Count Arthur for over 30 years, William could be said to have a thorough understanding of the information of these nobles. In just a few words, he informed Chen Mu of the identity of the aristocrat in front of him. After hearing this, Chen Mu nodded and glanced at the children of the nobles. Then he fixed his gaze on the red-haired man. The knight standing behind the red-haired man seemed to notice Chen Mu's gaze and suddenly turned his head to look at Chen Mu. But after seeing that it was Chen Mu, he shifted his gaze to William behind Chen Mu, and the coldness in his eyes disappeared into a faint smile. He nodded slightly at William. Seemingly sensing Chen Mu's strangeness, William spoke softly. "That is the Grand Knight of the Garden family, Liam Shives, who can also be considered my good friend. The Lord and the Earl of the Garden are close friends, and in their early years, they traveled together to the kingdom for several years. The Golden Lion family and the Garden family have been in contact for hundreds of years." Although Chen Mu's expression did not change after listening, a slight wave still stirred in his heart. He didn't expect that the person who killed him in the simulation, Lem Reeves, would appear in front of him so quickly. The reason for the failure of Count Arthur in the Lord's War over a decade later is likely due to his failure to anticipate the betrayal of Count Garden. After all, the two families have been together for hundreds of years, and they are still close friends. It's hard to imagine. Even if Chen Mu now tells his father, the Count of Garden, that he will betray their friendship and attack the Far East, his father probably won't believe it. Coincidentally, Chen Mu also wants to see if some real-life behaviors will change the simulated life. This hunting day will be a good opportunity. It seemed that it was because of Chen Mu's gaze just now that the young man with red hair chatted briefly with the person in front of him before walking towards Chen Mu with a smile on his face. Approaching Chen Mu, the red-haired man spoke gently. "Hello Viri, I'm Meri Carlos. We should be meeting for the first time, but I heard your older brother mention you." Meri Carlos's etiquette was also very good, and while speaking, he gently bowed his right hand over his heart. Normal social interaction is inevitable, and coincidentally, Chen Mu also wants to inquire about some news from Meri Carlos. So the two of them started chatting with great interest. However, Meri Carlos is truly interested, while Chen Mu is full of interest. Seeing the two disciples quickly getting to know each other, William and Lime also relaxed and leaned aside chatting. The number of people in the backyard is gradually increasing, and the banquet is about to begin. As the banquet was about to begin, Meri was still a bit unsatisfied, but chatting with Chen Mu made him feel very interesting. Some things are always spoken by Chen Mu in extremely special sentences, and even he cannot understand them. Chen Mu expressed that it is not special, after all, it is a language art that has been in China for 5,000 years in the past life. It would be strange if you could understand it. Chen Mu also gained a lot from this conversation, and in addition, Meri Carlos had no defense against him at all. So Chen Mu even knew how many troops Count Garden had. This is not a visible military force, but a hidden military force. Meri Carlos told Chen Mu all about it. Although I don't know if it's true, Chen Mu still gave him a thumbs up in her heart when she saw the confident appearance of Meri Carlos. "Meri, there's no doubt about the great filial son." The banquet was about to begin, and everyone in the venue gradually stopped talking and entered the banquet hall of the castle banquet together. Chen Mu and Mei Li walked side by side, while the two great knights followed behind them. Chen Mu has been a person of 2 generations and has a very accurate eye for people. After some conversation, he had already understood that this Meri, like the children of most noble families, was proficient in etiquette and communication. Even a knight apprentice, but a young man with no ulterior motives, his dream is to inherit the position of count in the future and wait for death. It was difficult for Chen Mu to associate Meri's father, the Earl of Garden, with him. Entering the banquet hall, Chen Mu and Mei Li took their seats, and all the nobles present were seated according to their social status. The person sitting at the top of the table was the host of the banquet, Nellie Lilith, the youngest daughter of the Marquis of Dawn. The banquet hall has angled dining tables arranged in a U shape, covered with white linen tablecloths. And Chen Mu and the others who attended the banquet all sat along the outside of the large dining table. This can enable the servants to serve dishes smoothly in the middle area. This arrangement can also make it easy for attendees to keep up with the progress of the banquet. On a raised platform in the middle of the banquet hall, there is a huge dining table, which is the main table. The main table is dedicated to the banquet host and aristocratic children like Chen Mu. Behind this main table hangs an extremely luxurious cover, highlighting the status of aristocrats like Chen Mu. The drinks are all placed on a dining table near the central main table. The servant responsible for serving wine starts from the main table and pours the wine one by one. Looking at the amber liquid in the silver-white wine glass in front of her, Chen Mu felt a slight sigh in her heart. After pouring the wine, the servant dressed in the uniform of the Lilith family carried various dishes belonging to the first course and rushed in. There are a wide variety of dishes at the banquet, ranging from desserts to meat, with dozens of different dishes included in each dish. Each dish is personally made by master-level chefs and is extremely luxurious. Only the amount of food and the number of dishes can largely reflect the wealth and status of the Marquis of Dawn. The gold coins spent on this banquet alone are something that ordinary people will never earn in their lifetime. When serving dishes, the servant will shout out the name of each dish loudly. The Lilith family prepared exclusive spoons with their own family emblem carved on them for each noble child, used for drinking soup and serving sauce, as well as a dining knife for cutting solid food. The aristocratic children present will have dedicated servants from the Lilith family who will directly serve food on their plates. As for the attendants of the nobility, they will take their own food from the same large plate. However, the attendants would not have any objections. After all, the tradition of hunting day banquets has remained unchanged for hundreds of years. Seeking follow-up reading, end of this chapter. Chapter 7. Nellie Lilith and the Beginning of Hunting. For follow-up reading, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Nellie and Lilith, and The Hunt Begins. For follow-up reading, after drinking and eating, Chen Mu held a glass and sipped the post-dinner wine. Chen Mu thought this was a simple banquet, but he still underestimated the luxury level of the kingdom's nobility. There are a variety of dishes, some of which Chen Mu has never heard of, let alone seen them. At the banquet, there were even some dishes with complex food ingredients and magical colors. For example, a roasted swan, where the chef glues clean feathers, adorned with silver and gold. Chen Mu also saw a peacock as if it were alive being brought to the dining table. The roasted peacock is still covered in beautiful feathers, supported by a stick, standing upright in a dining plate. The maid of the Lilith family placed a bundle of malt soaked in alcohol in the peacock's mouth and lit it, creating a magical scene of the peacock spitting fire when she served it to the table. Another dish is to make one pigeon into two. The chef peels off the skin of the pigeon and wraps it in a mixture made with cheese, eggs, seasoning, and raisins. Then sew the pigeon skin together and boil the new pigeon in boiling water. Next, the chef will go and bake the skinned real pigeon. And wrap it with a mixture made of bread crumbs during baking, and then polish it with egg mixture. In this way, a pigeon was made into two dishes. It has to be said that the luxury and power of the royal aristocracy were fully demonstrated at this banquet. Finally, when you leave, you can taste some light dim sum, cakes, preserves and nuts, which is called dessert for leaving dinner. In other words, the banquet starts with desserts and also ends with desserts. After the banquet, Chen Mu and Mei Li walked out of the banquet hall together. They also have to attend the evening ball. There is no way, this is an inevitable part of aristocratic communication, even if Chen Mu is not very interested in these. I don't know if it's an illusion, but Chen Mu always felt like the daughter of the Marquis of Dawn, Nellie and Lilith, had glanced at him several times at the banquet. The Dawn family has prepared specific rooms for all nobles participating in hunting day. Chen Mu found the room with the flag of the Golden Lion family emblem hanging and walked in. Chen Mu doesn't have much demand for living, but this doesn't affect the fact that these rooms are still extremely luxurious. I casually picked up a book called History of Kingdom Architecture on the bookshelf. Chen Mu sat on a wooden chair, gently flipping through the pages of the book. William and Chen Mu are not in the same room, and the guards also have their own rooms. William's room is next to Chen Mu's. The arrangement of the guard room is also to ensure that the guards can react promptly in case of unexpected situations. The Lilith family has taken everything into consideration. Time passed, and in the blink of an eye, it was evening. Moor Castle has a dance hall dedicated to holding dances, and when Chen Mu arrived, there were already many people here. Meri had already started chatting with a young girl, holding a glass of wine. Judging from their expressions, the conversation seemed to be good. Seeing Chen Mu come in, Meri quickly introduced the girl to Chen Mu. Viri, this is Finland Kekseli, the daughter of Viscount Silverflower. Finland, this is Viri Weasley, the son of Count Golden Lion. Upon hearing Meri introduce each other, Chen Mu and Finland greeted each other with a smile. The etiquette at the ball is not complicated, and exchanging names is just the norm. The ball had not yet started, so the three of them chatted softly. After a while, 2 more people were added to form a small social circle. That's why Count Golden Lion wants Chen Mu to participate in this hunting day. Making friends with other noble families is helpful to Chen Mu in the eyes of the Golden Lion Count. After a while, the ball began, and the musicians from the Dawn family entered the dance hall to play beautiful music. The musicians of the Chensi family are all formal court musicians. Even musicians have played in the palace, so the music they play is naturally pleasing and moving. Meri also invited Finland into the dance floor, while Chen Mu stopped in place with a glass of sweet wine. Chen Mu is undoubtedly one of the most eye-catching people at the ball. So naturally, there are many girls whose eyes frequently shift towards Chen Mu, as if they want to come forward and invite a dance, but lack confidence. Your Excellency, may I ask if you can dance with me? The soft voice suddenly coming from behind made Chen Mu instinctively turn his head to look. The next second, a hint of amazement appeared in his eyes. The invitation was sent by Nellie Lilith, the daughter of the Marquis of Dawn. At this moment, she was completely different from the majestic one at the banquet. Nellie Lilith was wearing a flowing silk dress, with a tall and slender figure. The long silver hair was exquisitely woven into a bun, and the smiling red lips slightly curled up. A pair of bright eyes looked at Chen Mu, exuding an undisguised confidence and nobility. Her fair and snowy skin accentuates her deep pupils and slender nose bridge, making her look like a perfect sculpture. Chen Mu naturally has no reason to refuse. As the son of the Count, although Chen Mu cannot be said to be proficient in social dance, he is not unfamiliar with it. Many people in the dance hall naturally noticed this scene. Seeing Chen Mu agree, envy and jealousy inevitably appeared in the eyes of all the men. In the eyes of the aristocratic girls, there was a hint of disappointment and regret. If I had known Chen Mu would have agreed so easily, they would have gone on too. On the dance floor, Chen Mu and Nai Lian were dancing social dances. Chen Mu could feel that the girl in front of him seemed not to be proficient in ballroom dancing either. So both of them have a slow pace, but surprisingly consistent. During the dance, Chen Mu maintained a suitable distance and posture, without being too intimate. Politeness and gentlemanly demeanor are fully reflected in him. Her words and actions also made Nellie Lilith feel sincere and respected. Unlike the people Nellie had seen before, she could feel that Chen Mu's eyes were clean and devoid of any impurities. In fact, when she saw Chen Mu for the first time at the banquet, Nellie had a good impression of Chen Mu in her heart. Now it can be said that her impression has improved, and she even had the idea of telling her father and Chen Mu's family to get married. But after thinking about it for a while, Nellie still kept this idea in her heart. After all, it was a banquet, and this was their second meeting. As the youngest daughter favored by the Marquis of Dawn, Nellie even had a marriage choice that other noble girls did not have. It can be seen from here how much Marquis Dawn dotes on her. In the eyes of some nobles, a daughter is a traded item in a marriage alliance. But in the Chensi family, Marquis Chensi does not need to sell his daughter to enhance his power and status. So he completely handed over the choice of love to Nellie. In the eyes of many nobles, this is unimaginable. After a social dance, Nalian's face turned slightly red. You should know that Nalian has hosted hunting days 3 times in a row, but inviting others to dance is still her first time. At the usual ball, she only showed up and never really danced on the dance floor, which is why she appeared a bit unfamiliar. Her face turned red with embarrassment, partly due to shyness, and partly because she felt a bit flustered when jumping back, feeling embarrassed in front of Chen Mu. Princess Nalian, your dance is very graceful. Dancing with you this time will definitely make me unforgettable forever. Chen Mu noticed the girl's embarrassment and spoke gently, her eyes clean and bright. In the Kingdom of Winter, a princess is not a unique title for princesses, and the daughters of marquis and counts can also be called princesses. Nalian looked up at Chen Mu. What she saw was Chen Mu's transparent gaze, and in that moment, a slight palpitation rose in her heart. After the ball ended, Chen Mu returned to the exclusive room prepared by the Chenxi family. It seems that Chen Mu's daily routine is very regular and he does not have the habit of staying up late in his previous life, which seems to be influenced by the original owner for 17 years. The next day, Chen Mu got up early in the morning, dressed neatly in formal attire after washing up. Today is the day when hunting begins. Starting today, the nobles can enter the mountains for hunting. You can enter alone, or you can form a small group to enter together. The Chenxi family has prepared various types of armor and bows, all of which are freely chosen by the nobles. Mei invited Chen Mu to form a team together, but after considering it, Chen Mu still refused. After all, due to the simulation, he was not completely at ease with Meri. Chen Mu chose a set of light armor and a pair of bows and arrows. The hunting day guards will also follow, but they will follow in secret. It only appears when life is in danger and does not aid in hunting. After all, if hunting also requires guards to take care of it, then this hunting day is meaningless. However, hunting is not particularly dangerous. Yaori Mountain has been cleared by the Knights of the Dawn family, and there are no particularly dangerous beasts. After all, this is hunting, not killing. Before entering the mountain, Chen Mu looked around and did not find William's figure. It was too easy for the Grand Knight to follow him without being noticed. Carrying the long bow in his hand, Chen Mu stepped into the Yao Sun Mountain. Seeking follow-up reading, end of this chapter. Chapter 8. The Great Toothed Boar and William's Shock. For follow-up, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. The Giant Toothed Boar and William's Shock. To be continued. A silver light suddenly appeared, and an arrow passed through the air and flew into a thicket of grass. There is a rabbit searching for food in the grass, with light gray fur that doesn't match its surroundings. At the next moment, the gray rabbit seemed to sense something, with hair rising all over its body. A pair of gray pupils twitched and seemed to want to jump up. But the arrows in the air are faster than their speed. The sound of cutting through the airflow sounded, and a splash of blood splattered. The gray rabbit was tightly nailed to the ground. Chen Mu lowered her long bow and walked towards the position of the gray rabbit. Reaching out and pulling out the arrow inserted into the rabbit, blood gushed out and dripped onto the ground. When the blood was almost flowing, Chen Mu picked up the gray rabbit with the rabbit ear and then used a long sword to dig out some soil to bury the blood. Gray plush rabbit, it has little value. Chen Mu picked up the gray rabbit and looked at it, then put it back in place. Hunting prey can be carried on their own or placed in place and will be collected by dedicated personnel. After 15 days, all the values will be counted, and the person with the highest prey value will receive a generous reward. Rewards are secondary, and the person ranked first will build up a considerable reputation in the hearts of the aristocratic children. Avoiding the gray velvet rabbit, Chen Mu advanced towards the deeper part of Yaori Mountain. This hunting was a good experience for him. Although it is impossible to truly test his strength as a peak Quasi knight. But it can also be a simple test of his knightly skills. For example, with the arrow just now, William, who was following Chen Mu from afar, took a clear look. He simply taught Chen Mu's archery skills. But looking at the arrow shot by Chen Mu, it clearly shows proficiency in archery. However, although William was surprised, he didn't think much about it. It could only be attributed to Chen Mu's extremely talented archery skills. Chen Mu walked through the primitive forest, heading towards the depths from the outer periphery of Yaori Mountain. Compared to the outskirts of Mount Yao, there are more wild beasts in the depths of Mount Yao. Although it has been cleaned up once, there are still many wild beasts that pose a threat to humans. However, with William's guard, Chen Mu can boldly advance deeper. In fact, even without William, Chen Mu could still go deep on her own. The cultivation of a peak Quasi knight is rarely threatened by wild beasts. The name Yaori Mountain actually has a saying. It is said that on a certain day of the year, 3 great suns will appear simultaneously on the summit of Mount Yaori, which is extremely brilliant and eye-catching. Therefore, the Marquis of Dawn named this place Yaori Mountain. The former Yaori Mountain was a rarely inhabited place, but since it was designated as the territory of Marquis of Dawn, it has been renovated. The Moor Castle standing on the mountaintop is extremely famous throughout the entire Kingdom of Winter. Even the Marquis of Dawn will come here a few days a year. You should know that compared to the castle where Marquis Dawn often resides, this place can be said to be extremely remote. Suddenly, Chen Mu heard a rustling sound coming from the bushes ahead. After entering the depths of Yaori Mountain, he remained constantly vigilant and alert to the surrounding movements. So at the moment when there was a sound coming from the huge bushes, Chen Mu reacted. As his footsteps moved, his body immediately appeared behind the big tree. The incredibly thick trunk of the big tree can perfectly block Chen Mu's body. Chen Mu held his breathing probe slightly. He saw a wild boar with an incredibly large body size in his eyes. The wild boar is covered in dark brown mane all over its body, with its sideburns collapsing all over its body, its eyes exposed, and its sideburns unable to block its strong and powerful muscles. 2 straight and long teeth spread outwards, with a length of 40 to 50 centimeters. Fangs are eye-catching and sharp, with large and pointed ears standing upright on both sides of the head, and sharp short spikes on the tail. Giant-toothed wild boar. Chen Mu murmured in her heart. The giant-toothed wild boar can be said to be an extremely powerful beast in the forest, and its massive size is a nightmare for countless people. Chen Mu did not expect such fierce beasts to still exist in the cleared Yaori Mountain, but he was not too worried. Giant-toothed wild boars are extremely fond of inhabiting dense shrubs. The wild boar has an unusually irritable personality, and its limbs are short and thick, so its speed is also extremely fast. At the next moment, the giant-toothed wild boar's nose twitched slightly, and its exposed eyes fixed tightly on the big tree where Chen Mu was hiding. Being targeted. At the moment of being stared at, Chen Mu did not hesitate and quickly reached out to take out an arrow from the quiver behind him. At the next moment, Chen Mu leaned back slightly and her shoulders tightened. The tense bowstring was instantly pulled full by Chen Mu, and the bow bent. The knuckles of Chen Mu's fingertips protruded, and due to excessive force, they turned slightly white. In just an instant, the bowstring was released by Chen Mu. A sharp sound sounded, and the arrow shot like lightning towards the belly of the wild boar on its side. Chen Mu aimed at the soft part of the body of the giant-toothed wild boar. This arrow piercing through the air is a deadly one. In this scene, not only did the giant-toothed wild boar in front of him not react. Even William, who was ready to take action at any time not far from Chen Mu, was taken aback. The result was no surprise, accompanied by a scream and a collision sound, as the arrow pierced straight into the body of the giant-toothed wild boar from its side. The giant-toothed wild boar struggled to escape, but the arrows running through its body made it fall to the ground with only 2 steps and unable to move. Scarlet blood gushed out like a spring. With its intense struggle and convulsions, the blood stained the surrounding soil red. The painful roar is its last sound left in this world. With the skilled archery skills of the peak Quasi Knights, Chen Mu shot and killed a giant-toothed wild boar that was comparable to the Quasi Knights with one arrow. How could it be? Your strength. Chen Mu felt a gust of wind blowing and William appeared in front of him, his face filled with shock and disbelief. At this moment, he couldn't control any hunting days anymore, and the young master's strength was clearly abnormal. He was afraid that Chen Mu had taken some secret medicine with sequelae to improve his strength. Secret medicine is something that cannot be taken casually. Most secret medicines that do not match breathing techniques have serious sequelae after taking them. At the next moment, William quickly removed Chen Mu's armor, pinched Chen Mu's wrist, and touched his bones, his face becoming even more shocked. The bone strength of the peak Quasi Knight is impossible. Young master, could you tell me if you have taken some secret medicine? William's tone was extremely serious, and he was still holding Chen Mu's wrist in his hand. Chen Mu tried but couldn't break free. However, Chen Mu was not surprised. When he showed his strength, he understood that this scene would happen. For this, he had already prepared a plan in his heart. So Chen Mu couldn't help but cry and laugh. Your Excellency William, don't worry too much. You can understand that I am born with divine power. My strength has always been great, but I haven't shown it. It wasn't until recently that I discovered after encountering the path of knights that I had more than one level of strength than ordinary people. Upon hearing Chen Mu's words, William released Chen Mu's wrist. Wrinkling his brows and pondering, it seemed as if he remembered something looking at Chen Mu with a hint of surprise in his eyes. William instinctively believed Chen Mu's words. Because he felt that Chen Mu had no need to deceive him in such a matter. He actually felt a bit impulsive, and the secret medicine was not so easy to obtain. He was just too worried about Chen Mu, but subconsciously overlooked that Chen Mu did not have access to the secret medicine. In the Kingdom of Winter, secret medicines are prohibited items. I don't know if you're lucky or unlucky, young master. It's not uncommon for you to be born with great power. This situation has occurred many times in the history of the Kingdom of Cold Winter. William's tone was a bit hesitant, but after some thought, he continued to say. But as far as I know, it is very difficult for naturally powerful people to activate their life seeds and become knights. Among the hundreds of known naturally powerful people in the kingdom, only one has become a knight. After William finished speaking, he instinctively looked at Chen Mu's face, as if he wanted to find a sense of disappointment on Chen Mu's face. But unlike what he thought, Chen Mu's face did not have a disappointed expression, it was just plain as water. Although Chen Mu's face did not change, his heart was also stunned. He knows his own things clearly, and his innate divine power is something he casually fabricated. He thought William wouldn't believe it, but who knew there really was such a thing as innate divine power? He naturally won't be disappointed, because he is not inherently divine. He is simply lacking in talent, but with an emulator, his future will naturally not be weaker than anyone else. However, he still spoke curiously and asked. Your Excellency William, do you know the only person who was born with great power but became a knight? Upon hearing Chen Mu's words, William thought it was because Chen Mu had the confidence to imitate the person who was also naturally powerful but became a knight. So he nodded lightly. True Moss, the Land Knight. A Kingdom Epic Knight. Seeking follow. Up reading, end of this chapter. Chapter 9. New Simulation and Official Knights. Seeking follow. Up reading, you are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 9 New Simulation and Official Knight. Seeking follow. Up reading, in the depths of Yaori Mountain, a large tree stands in place. The huge tree crown has countless branches and leaves. The gentle breeze blows, and the green leaves sway gently in the wind, making a rustling sound. On the branch, a green venomous snake slowly crawled. This venomous snake has a flat head, a high nose bridge, and small and cunning eyes. The sun, which cannot be covered by the leaves, shines eerily on the snake's body. At the next moment, the sound of cutting through the airflow sounded, and the venomous snake was nailed to the tree by a sudden arrow. The venomous snake is covered in needle-shaped scales, resembling fish scales. When hit, it opens its mouth and reveals two sharp fangs. Crazy wriggling was of no use, and even if the wizard shot through its head, it could not be saved. Seeing the venomous snake no longer struggling, Chen Mu did not approach either. It is now the 7th day of hunting day. After the start of hunting day, Chen Mu can be said to have made a name for himself. The prey he hunts cannot be kept hidden. At this point, everyone knew that the son of the Far East Earl had the strength of a Quasi knight. And the more rumors spread, the more exaggerated it is. Now in their eyes, Chen Mu is just an official knight. Mei also specifically approached Chen Mu to inquire, but Chen Mu only answered by chance. No one will believe this statement. After all, it's okay to hunt one beast by chance, but hunting 3 beasts by chance is a bit fake. Now those nobles looked at Chen Mu with an unconscious hint of awe in their eyes, and there was even an irresistible admiration in Meri's eyes. It can be said that the first place on this hunting day is already in Chen Mu's bag. However, Chen Mu didn't pay too much attention to this. After all, his original intention this time was just to follow the process, and these were all accidents. Putting away his long bow, Chen Mu slowly walked towards the outskirts of Yaori Mountain. He no longer intends to stay here, and continuing hunting is meaningless. Coincidentally, a new simulation opportunity has arrived, and Chen Mu plans to use it as soon as possible. He feels that this simulation may bring some different gains. Returning to the room prepared by the Moore Castle Dawn family, Chen Mu sat on a bench. The next moment, a transparent blue light curtain appeared in front of him. Name: Chen Mu, Spirit. 1.3, Constitution. 2.2, Realm. Peak Quasi Knight, Witchcraft. None, Breathing Method. Golden Lion Breathing Method, proficient in 32/800, Knight Skills. Lionheart / proficient 42/800, Basic Riding, proficient 128/800, Basic Shooting, proficient 630/800, Basic Swordsmanship, proficient 523/1600, Basic Fighting, proficient 115/1600. Number of simulations. 1. There hasn't been much change in the property panel, as the number in the column representing the number of simulations has changed from 0 to 1. If last month's Chen Mu was just skeptical, then now he can be certain that the simulation frequency is exactly once every 30 days. Because the number of simulations obtained this time is also 30 days from the last time. If it's a coincidence once, then it's basically certain if it's like this twice. I am very satisfied with simulating Chen Mu once a month. As long as the simulation time does not increase exponentially, it is good news for him. Do you want to start a life simulation? Upon seeing this prompt, Chen Mu answered yes in her heart without hesitation. As with the previous 2 simulations, the blue light curtain suddenly disappeared. A series of black text appeared, and Chen Mu, who had undergone 2 simulations, naturally understood the process. So Chen Mu held his breath and stared tightly at the black font in front of him. He needs to ensure that he doesn't miss any information. Life simulation has been enabled, but due to the low version of the simulator, only text simulation is supported. 17 years old. You achieved first place on hunting day and gained considerable prestige in the hearts of the nobles. Although your father was shocked by your innate strength, he did not doubt you and taught you the Golden Lion breathing technique. At the age of 18, without any resistance, you diligently practiced the Golden Lion breathing technique and reached the bottleneck at an extremely fast speed. On the hunting day of this year, you were also the first, and your relationship with the daughter of the Marquis of Dawn rapidly heated up, 19 years old. The realm of a formal knight still holds you back, but that year, the daughter of the Marquis of Dawn, Nellie Lilith, is engaged to you. At the age of 20, you and Nellie Lilith are officially married, and the Golden Lion and Dawn families have also formed an alliance. 21 years old. Your addiction to the gentle countryside has reduced your cultivation amount, and the usual 8 hours of cultivation have been shortened to 3 hours. 22 years old. Still addicted to the gentle countryside, the path of nights seems like a natural barrier separating you, but you don't force yourself. You handle training like completing tasks every day. 24 years old. Your father ceded a territory to you in the Far East, and you became a lord. In the same year, your first daughter was born, and you named her Molly Weasley. 26 years old. You don't have much time to polish your body anymore. It seems good to be a lord, and you're no longer fixated on becoming a formal knight. Seeing this, Chen Mu furrowed his brow slightly. It was simply that he in the simulator did not match his reality. In theory, if he had learned about the future Lord War, he should not have been so indifferent. It is highly likely that some memories about the simulator were blocked during the simulation. So Chen Mu remained silent and continued to look down. 28 years old. You and your wife Nellie Lilith are a harmonious couple, and your territory is also well managed by you. In the same year, your first son was born, and you named him Zeus Weasley. 30 years old. With both children and territory, your life is very comfortable. You have not worn armor for a year and have touched the knight's sword. The number of times you meet your father has gradually decreased. 32 years old. As usual, but a big event happened in the Golden Lion family. Your father passed on the title of Count to your elder brother Nicholas Weasley, and you attended the banquet. Your elder brother did not take away your right to become Count, as usual. 35 years old. The Lord War broke out, initiated by the newly appointed Grand Duke of the Kingdom, the Eagle Grand Duke. This was a Lord War that swept across the entire kingdom. 36 years old. In this sudden war, no one was spared. The first person involved in the war in Dongha province was the Marquis of Dawn, and the Golden Lion family was not spared. 37 years old. With peak Quasi Knight strength, you put on your armor again, picked up your heavy sword, and plunged into this Lord's War. 39 years old. War is cruel, let alone the epic knights of the kingdom. Your father, elder brother, wife, son, and daughter all died, and you were seriously injured and unconscious, falling into a state of false death. When you got up from the pile of corpses, you were desperate. 40 years old. Hatred has plunged you into endless self-blame, and there is only one thought in your heart that supports you to live, which is revenge. Your enemy is the Eagle Grand Duke. 42 years old. You joined a secret assassination organization in the kingdom and forgot your former name. 45 years old. Years of assassination experience and injuries during the Lord's War have left your body scarred. You used all your savings to buy a bottle of secret medicine on the black market. 46 years old. The probability of successfully activating the life seed by swallowing the secret medicine is even less than 10%, but you are lucky. Driven by hatred, you successfully activated the life seed and became a knight. 47 years old. The sequelae of the secret medicine are huge, and you only have 3 years left. You start planning a revenge plan against the Eagle Duke, and for this, you have prepared for 7 years. 48 years old. You obtained a bottle of golden poison in the black market, which is extracted from the fang of the golden cobra, but it is too obvious to be used for assassination. 49 years old. You racked your brains, conducted countless experiments, and used all your life's knowledge to purify a truly colorless, tasteless, and highly toxic bottle. 50 years old. After years of planning, you got involved in the birthday banquet of the eldest son of the Eagle Lord. You tampered with the food at the banquet, and your hatred made you think that no one present was innocent because this toxin worked slowly. The drug tester did not detect any abnormalities, and your plan was successful. Not a single one of the more than 200 people who attended the banquet survived, and countless people died due to one of your ideas. You also took it down at the banquet poison, you are dead. This tragedy has shocked the entire kingdom of winter, but it has nothing to do with you anymore. Simulation ends, please select your reward. Preserve realm, or, preserve technique, silence, silence. This is the first time he has experienced such significant emotional fluctuations in a simulated life. Because he was too immersed, even though it was just text, Chen Mu could still feel his despair in the simulation. He doesn't have any cheats in his sims. But after experiencing the tragic death of all his relatives, he used the memories of his past life to purify a bottle of colorless and tasteless poison. Chen Mu couldn't imagine what kind of despair that was. It's hard to imagine how difficult it is to purify poison. He only knows that he feels extremely suppressed just by looking at these words. Chen Mu exhaled heavily and cleared the negative emotions from her mind. Chen Muping quickly recovered. After all, this was just a simulation that happened, and in reality, he would never allow such things to happen. Preserve the realm. With thoughts in mind, Chen Mu's body underwent a huge change in the next moment. His heartbeat began to accelerate, and a thumping sound seemed to be coming out of his body. If he could look inside, he could find a golden seed-like substance rooted in the center of his heart. Countless golden airflow surged out of this seed, first wrapping his heart and then filling his entire body. This feeling of anger was extremely obvious, and Chen Mu even felt as if something was about to burst out of his body. He could feel the surge of power, and there seemed to be a tremendous force as if it were a rock-breaking force between his fists. My muscles bulged all over me, making a huge sound like a machine as I inhaled and exhaled. As time passed, the bulging muscles slowly returned to normal. The sound of breathing gradually became the same as usual, but it became even longer. Chen Mu clenched his fist tightly. He felt that now he could even explode a set of iron armor directly. Of course, it's definitely not that exaggerated. Even the Grand Knight can only use his sword to cut open the iron armor. The unarmed explosion was just an illusion brought to Chen Mu by the sudden surge in power. At the next moment, Chen Mu's mind moved and a transparent blue light curtain reappeared in front of him. Seeking follow-up reading, end of this chapter. Chapter 10. Uprising Physical Fitness and Competition, seeking further reading, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10, Explosive Physical Fitness and Competition, seeking further reading, name. Chen Mu, Spirit. 1.5, Constitution. 3.6, Realm. Official Knight, Witchcraft. None, Breathing Method. Golden Lion Breathing Method, proficient in 32/800, Knight Skills. Lionheart / proficient 42/800, Basic Riding, proficient 128/800, Basic Shooting, proficient 630/800, Basic Swordsmanship, proficient 523/1600, Basic Fighting, proficient 115/1600. Simulation count. 0. Compared to before, the realm column has changed from a peak Quasi Knight to a formal Knight. His physical attributes have greatly improved, and even his spiritual attributes have increased by 0.2 after activating the life seed. Don't underestimate this 0.2 increase. Chen Mu can clearly feel that his thinking is more agile than before. According to Chen Mu's judgment, spiritual attributes should be closely related to the path of the wizard. Chen Mu's subconscious stimulation had already concentrated the golden airflow in the heart center, but it could not shake at all. The golden airflow remained motionless in the center of his heart, but Chen Mu was not too worried. Because this situation is normal. The golden energy generated by activating the life seed through the golden lion breathing technique cannot be freely mobilized, but requires Knight skills to be mobilized. To activate these golden energies in every move, one must become a Grand Knight. However, without knightly skills, these golden auras are not useless. If using Knight skills is an active skill, then the golden energy itself is a passive skill. During the battle, these golden energies located in the center of the heart will automatically replenish your stamina, equivalent to hanging a mana recovery buff. This is the absolute advantage of formal knights over quasi-knights, with greater strength and several times greater stamina due to chi, as well as cheating-like knightly skills. The knightly skill that can release gas has a huge increase in growth for regular knights. Chen Mu found it difficult to imagine how he killed 2 formal knights in the second simulation at the level of a quasi-knight. It is also possible that not all formal knights are as strong as him. After all, Chen Mu has not really fought against the official knights yet, and he is not sure about the strength of other official knights. You should know that Chen Mu has only been in this world for less than 3 months, and has reached a level that ordinary people may never reach in their lifetime. From an ordinary person to a formal knight, Chen Mu only spent 3 simulations. Even the path of the wizard is not as mysterious in Chen Mu's eyes now. What about 5th class qualifications? With the help of simulators, if 1 simulation doesn't work, then 2. If it doesn't work twice, it's only 10 times. 10 times not enough, 100 times. He doesn't believe that after hundreds of simulations, he can't become a wizard. In the following days, Chen Mu did not continue hunting in the mountains. But instead, they sparred with William every day in the training ground of Castle Morel. William naturally suppressed his strength and did not use chi or knight skills. Chen Mu also did not reveal the strength of the official knight. After all, in William's eyes, he was just a naturally powerful quasi-knight, not a formal knight who had practiced breathing techniques. This is also Chen Mu's intention. After all, although he is a formal knight now, his actual combat ability is still too rough. Dueling with William, who suppressed his strength, has greatly improved his practical combat abilities. On the training ground, Chen Mu was wearing silver-white armor and holding a long sword. As he moved around, a crisp sound could be heard from his feet. William in front of him was not wearing armor, but holding a sword with one hand. A casual move can accurately block every sword that Chen Mu chops. Although Chen Mu is wearing armor, his posture is still agile. The sound of knightly swords intertwining kept ringing in the training ground. William is just defending, not attacking. His original intention was to give Chen Mu a move. In the flickering light of the sword, Chen Mu moved back and forth in the field, sometimes charging forward and backward, and sometimes swinging his heavy sword. The movements are smooth and precise. William's movements under his feet were minimal, and with just a simple move, he could easily block all of Chen Mu's attacks. The gap is really too big. Chen Mu sighed in her heart. Using only the peak strength of the quasi-knight, Chen Mu could not even make William, who had already suppressed his strength, take a step back. The metal friction of the armor sounded, and Chen Mu's speed increased again. The silver-white long sword was heavily swung by Chen Mu, and the air seemed to be cut open. This is Chen Mu's hard work. Although not reaching the level of a formal knight, it is definitely the pinnacle of a quasi-knight. Okay. Upon seeing this sword, William's eyes flickered, and in the next moment, there seemed to be a white airflow passing through his arm. Dang! 2 knightly swords collided with a huge crisp sound, and a hint of fireworks seemed to splash in the air. This blow was still blocked by William, but he instinctively used his breath. This is completely a subconscious application. The Grand Knight, due to prolonged use of chi against enemies, sometimes instinctively uses chi, which has become a habit. But this precisely represents that Chen Mu's heavy sword poses a slight threat to William. If there is no threat, William's body will not have any subconscious actions. Young master, your swordsmanship is already very proficient. With your innate strength and proficient swordsmanship, if you have stronger practical combat abilities, you will have few opponents in the realm of quasi-knights. William showed an appreciative expression on his face and a sincere tone in his tone, which was indeed the idea in his heart. This time when you go back, the master should be able to teach you breathing techniques. From now on, you can't be too complacent. It's extremely difficult for a natural giant to activate the seed of life, and you can't slack off at all. After appreciating him, William was afraid that Chen Mu would become arrogant and complacent, so he gave a serious warning on his face. The starting point for innate power is indeed high, but the difficulty of activating the life seed to become a formal knight is also high. It's like heaven opening a window for you and then closing a door for you. Upon hearing William's words, Chen Mu nodded solemnly, and he naturally understood William's concerns. However, it is evident that William's concerns are unnecessary. William did not know that Chen Mu's innate strength was fake, let alone that Chen Mu was already a formal knight at this time. Remove the silver knight armor and return the long sword to the sword belt. Chen Mu and William leave the training ground together. Due to hunting day, there were only Chen Mu and William on the training ground. Except for Chen Mu, the other aristocratic children still go hunting in the mountains every day. After all, not everyone is like Chen Mu. Chen Mu felt that hunting was meaningless to him, while other nobles felt that hunting was a good experience. After leaving the training ground, Chen Mu washed up and returned to her room. Then, as usual, he took down a book from the bookshelf and slowly flipped through the pages. Chen Mu also recently discovered that reading can calm his mind. When reading, there will be a quiet atmosphere surrounding him, making him feel incredibly quiet. Chen Mu's stronger spiritual power allows him to quickly immerse himself in the world of books. When immersed in the text of a book, his mind becomes calm and stable, which is actually somewhat similar to the meditation of a wizard. This is a state of unrestrained and relaxed conformity. In fact, if Chen Mu understood, he would know that the first step to cultivate the wizard's meditation is to reach this state. Now he can be said to have met the first condition for practicing the wizard's meditation idea. Seeking follow. Up reading, end of this chapter.